now.
Okay. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. We start in the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. We bear witness there is no deity worthy worship except Allah. Praise and glory to Him. That peace and blessing be upon His Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his last prophet. And this is the A2Z Show, and this is Dr. Abdul Aziz with you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala. Peace be upon you all, dear brothers, dear sisters. And of course, Assalamu alaikum, brother Asad Zaman is our guest today in our this A2Z Show. And of course, one of the main topic today is back to school. And the second one we'll be talking about is tomorrow will be Ashura, the 10th day of the first month of Islamic Calendar. And we have other topics, inshallah. We'll just get them as we go through as well. First of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Asad.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Right, okay. Right.
Great to be with you again.
Okay, barakallahu fiqh. Now the question, going back to school. Now, of course, the school, primary school, you have early years of school and the nurseries, and we have primary school, secondary school, colleges, and maybe the universities, maybe they are later going to enter as well. Now,
before we start the thing, I think if we can just remind.
Go on.
The different topics, like I think you just briefly mentioned it, but the 10th of Muharram, why it's important. Sunnis is important, Shia is important. You got your children going back to school, and the government is saying that all workers should go back to work as well, to offices. And then, of course, there is this very serious situation with the US-China war getting closer and closer. And then there is a very famous Muslim woman who's been honored for her services during World War II for Britain against the Nazis, Noor Inayat Khan. And so we can talk about that as well.
A little bit about sex and relationship education as well.
Absolutely, yes. Children going back to school and the different things that there'll be, well, the issues around going back to school, and then what topics, things that we should be concerned about.
Right, okay. Therefore, we can, if we have time, is it? If not, we have to pass it to another time anyway.
Well, we've got until, well, yes, we'll spend about 10-15 minutes on each of them, 10 minutes.
Right, okay. Right, okay. Let's start with returning back to school. And I think in your college you have been teaching anyway, therefore you have started your college and you are with, but your number is smaller, therefore, yes. But what is your now position regarding returning in September for the school children? Of course, the government has said that the youngsters will not have this tiny risk of being infected as well.
That's right. So essentially what the government is saying is, look, it's far, far better for children under 19 to be going to school than to be staying at home. It's far healthier for them to be going to school than staying at home. You see, you have to remember, although the government has received a lot of criticism, and a lot of it actually is quite justified criticism because of the way they've handled this pandemic. But also we have to understand that this particular virus, COVID-19, is a new virus, and you know it's fairly new. It's only 6 months old, and people are still trying to get to know. The government is still trying to understand, you know, what the implications of it are. You know, what is it about, and what are how does it operate? So what they're basically saying now is, look. The new research has been in fact, just mentioned today, it was on radio, that no healthy child under the age of 19 has died of COVID-19. Yeah? No child under the age of 19 that's been a healthy child. So those very, very few who have died have had other underlying issues. And a very, very small number of children who have died, they have suffered, they've mostly been obese children, and therefore, you know, only obese children largely, to some extent, have been affected by this. So if you are if you're quite normal and you're not obese, and also there's been a very small number of children, are higher than normal, who are from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. But again, very, very small number, much more than has been emphasized by some of these newspapers. So the government is saying, look, there's two main things really that we as a society should be wary of, and especially within the school environment. Just be careful of these two, mainly these two things, and by and large, children should be quite safe. Number one, maintain your social distancing, okay? Maintain your social distancing, and you should be pretty much okay. And that's, you know, 1 to 1.5, 1 to 2 meters between you at all times. So no touching and all the rest of it. And secondly, regularly do your hand washing. So keep yourself, you know, the hygiene element is extremely important, because the government is saying mostly it is spread through coughing and sneezing. And if it gets onto our hands or onto our face, then it can enter our body. Of course, with our hands, we can transmit it much more easily to other people. Also, I mean, there is some controversy about masks. Other governments have made masks more or less compulsory, but this government doesn't seem to be very concerned about masks, although they have now said that masks should be worn certainly in secondary schools, but not in the classroom necessarily, in corridors and outside of the classroom. So again, you know, they keep saying that, you know, we are being led by the science, but you know, there are people who are wondering whether it's just purely science or it's more politics. But certainly that is the advice now. It's healthier for children to be in school than to be at home. At home, you know, you've got many, many issues like mental health problems. A lot of young people, you know, even 9, 10-year-old being locked up, are suffering from mental health issues. And of course, having lost so much education, that clearly is going to have a damaging impact on them, short term and long term.
Right, and you know, of course the part, you know, they have the teachers, the staff, contractors, visitors, you know, and of course all the schools have put the risk assessment. They did the policies. They do one-way traffic, what we say, and therefore they reduce.
That's right.
Reduce the contact between the children, everything. The idea is it's just the risk of, then they said that if somebody has a fever or he lost a sense of smell, or these 3 symptoms, and coughing, he should not be going. But they think the other one which can complicate things is they said about the flu, you know, during now the September, October, usually those who have health conditions, they usually have a flu vaccination, and maybe the number of flu vaccination will increase because of this COVID-19, because it's a combination of the two. Do you think that the National Health Service will be overwhelmed because of the pandemic and the flu as well?
Absolutely. A combination of the flu virus and the COVID-19 is definitely going to cause more issues for the health service. No question about it. During the winter months, you know, starting perhaps, you know, October and onwards.
I think it has always started because it's windy and very cold now.
Well, I mean,
anyway.
Even today, you can see the terrible weather. The autumn has come, you know, temperatures dropped a little bit. Certainly is cold, well, fairly cold, wet and windy. So as the temperature drops even more, the problem is in this particular virus, does not care too much about temperature, because as we are told from the latest information they have, that neither hot weather nor cold weather kills it. With the flu virus, we know in the summer it disappears, and in the winter it comes back, obviously mutated as well. So if that's what's, if that's what's going to happen with COVID-19, COVID-19 is here with us to stay, and it's going to
and there
mutate.
was, I think I have received even a petition from some parents, concerned parents, especially. They said that they should delay the back to school because some people have underlying health conditions, and then with the COVID-19 and the virus, that will be like a combination of all these kind of things, which may complicate and make the problem very, very complex as well.
So if I was a teacher, I would be concerned, because I could catch it from other teachers or from the children. Children, we know it hardly affects them, okay? They might have some flu symptoms or may have no symptoms. But as an adult, especially if the teacher is slightly old as well, then clearly there are going to be issues of the possibility of contracting the virus from the children. And you go home, you give it to your partner, your husband, or your wife, or whatever. And then if there are you've got your parents and grandparents living with you, they are much more vulnerable. And so that fear is there, but the government is it's like a trade-off now. So far as the government is concerned, the ideal thing is stay indoors. Just don't go outside of the house. But, that's just not practical. And the government knows it. So there's got to be a trade-off between not killing yourself, being locked up at home all the time, and secondly, not killing yourself by maintaining your distancing, going outside, smelling the fresh air, taking it in. And also, of course, there's this socializing element. We human beings, we can't be away from people. It's just part of our nature. And there are going to be some very serious consequences. And we can go on to obviously going back to work, because the two things are connected. Because the government is saying to workers now, go back to work. The first advice we were given was stay at home. Unless
work from home, yes.
You have to go to work. You can't help it because you can't work from home. Either through social media or video conferencing or whatever. Now the government is saying no, get out of your house and go to work, unless you can't for some reason, and stay at home if you really must. So it's changed its advice, but the problem, of course, is now that there has been over the past few months, since March 23rd when the lockdown started, there's been a change of culture, and that change of culture is having a severe impact on the attitude of people. People are afraid to die, and if they can work from home, which a lot of people are, a lot of companies have now changed their practices to say that you don't have to go back to work if you can work at home. It saves companies a lot of money as well in terms of space, and also perhaps traveling expenses and all the rest of it, and maybe other expenses too. So they can probably even reduce the wages of the workers because they're working from home, and so there are no expenses to go to offices. But also there is another problem as well, that a lot of course offices are in city centers, and the result of that is that by having so few people going into the city centers, which is really the case now, we are experiencing the death of the city center. People are simply not going in. So all of the businesses that survive on the people who go to the city center offices and workplaces, they are seriously suffering. So all the food outlets, the restaurants, the takeaways.
Manger, that one I think is,
Yes,
I think
they're all suffering.
making about 2,800 people redundant or something.
Right throughout, and all high street shops now, people are not going in, and they're going to be closing. So city centers, which are the heart of pretty much every city, are dying because of this change of culture of working from home rather than traveling. And of course, people are afraid to travel by public transport as well because of the fear of catching the virus. And so there is this massive change that's happening. Also, they fear now that there'll be even more redundancies because you're more likely to fire someone that who you've never seen, perhaps because they never come to the office, than someone that you see face to face. This is what the psychologists are saying now, that it's much easier to fire someone that you don't really see much than someone that you see every day. And so firing workers is going to become much more easier, and so there's less job stability. So there's a lot of negative impact that's going to happen. And
well,
of course,
the idea of the situation, because it's new, to adapt on this new situation, the condition we are living in, it's why it's taking time from everybody, from the business side, from the government side, from the worker side, school side. Everybody is adapting to this new condition. The idea is adapting with it. That does mean that there is always a risk that the results and the risk is there always. And if things doesn't go according to plans, then do you think that we will have to be locked down again if the increase of infection, everything, especially?
The practical way forward now, rather than lock down the entire country, is what they're doing now is wherever there's a flare-up, of this COVID-19 virus, that particular area is being locked down. Like, for example, there was a flare-up in Manchester, in Greater Manchester. Mm-hmm. And so the advice was, okay, right, you don't move about too much, but you can move about a little bit. You can, up to 6 people can visit each other, in their homes or in their gardens. And then suddenly, when there was a flare-up a few weeks ago in the Greater Manchester area, they said, no, that's it. Everyone, stay in your own homes.
And do you envisage that there will be a problem on this bank holiday? Well, because the weather is not so good, therefore that should not be a problem.
Well, that's why. In fact, just on that point, just today it's been announced that on Wednesday, certain parts of Greater Manchester, like Salford, Trafford, and Stockport, as well as one or two other parts of Greater Manchester, the government is relaxing its rules on them, and therefore it's essentially saying from Wednesday onwards, it will be possible for us to visit each other again now in Stockport. So I live in the Stockport sort of region, and therefore, I'm glad that that's over, because I was hoping to, hold a barbecue and what have you just before the lockdown came, and then suddenly the lockdown comes in and I had to cancel it.
And I think maybe that's on the last point. I think about the discipline in the schools. Do you think that the pupils will take on all the instructions and will follow them to the letter? Or
sure.
The pupils, yes, they in school, especially in secondary school.
Abdul Aziz, you've been a teacher. I'm a teacher. You've been a teacher in primary school or secondary schools. Okay, older children, to some extent, you can discipline them, you can teach them, you can educate them about social distancing. You try doing that to a 5, 6, 7-year-old. It's very, very difficult indeed. A poor teacher is going to be saying, every, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, keep your distance, keep your distance. You know, every time more than one child, you know, gets up maybe to go to the toilet, whatever, he's going to be, how are you going to maintain that with very young children? It's just not possible. So that's why many teachers are saying it's, you know, they will be very concerned about going back. They will not be happy about going back. They feel it's too early because the virus is still, you know, quite rampant. Anyhow, let's move on.
Right. Okay. Therefore, I think we want to touch upon the. I think we spoke about the sex education last time.
Yes, we did. I think we've said a fair bit
and
about.
I think your resume was actually to summarize that all schools, they should have a policy regarding what they will be doing and the material they will be showing, and agencies which will be invited to schools as well, and the parents should be made aware of that, isn't it?
That's right. Look, at the end of the day, the bottom line is every single school must consult parents before they expose their children to any kind of literature that possibly may go against the feelings or faith of the parents. That's the bottom line. And that children should not be exposed to anything that parents are strongly opposed to. If
Right.
teachers follow that simple rule, there shouldn't really be a problem. The problem has always been where head teachers, they ignore government guidelines, which very clearly state that the school must consult parents and take their faith, their values into consideration when they are putting together, compiling this sex education and relationship education syllabus. Where that happens, there won't be a problem. Where that doesn't happen, there's likely to be a problem.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, then I think we just move on. I think tomorrow, this 10th of Muharram, is most people fast for that. And can you just give us a brief why the Muslim fast and what happened historically in that day?
Okay. Well, 10th of Muharram for Sunnis is a happy day and a month. Muharram is a happy month. For Shia brothers, Muharram is a sad month, and the 10th of Muharram is a sad day. So we need to be very clear that, you know, there is a distinction between how Sunnis Muslims, who are the overwhelming majority in this world, well over 80-85%, and Shia, who are mostly the remainder. Therefore, let's make a quick distinction and see what the differences are. So this is the 10th of Muharram is a sacred month for both, for the reasons I've said, we'll mention now. For Sunnis, well, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged all Muslims to fast on the 10th of Muharram, and some say 9th and 10th and 11th as well. Why? Well, when the Prophet ﷺ emigrated to Medina, he noticed that on the 10th of Muharram, there were some Jewish tribes there already, and they were fasting. And he asked them, why are you fasting on this month? Now remember, the fast of Ramadan had not been incorporated within Islam. So there was no fasting until that stage for Muslims. So the Jewish leaders or whoever said to him, well, on this day, Moses and the Bani Israel, the children of Israel, the Jews, were emancipated from the tyranny of Pharaoh and his regime. So Musa al-Islam, Moses, and the people of and the Jewish people, the children of Israel, they were freed from the shackles of Pharaoh. So the Prophet ﷺ said, well, Musa alayhi Moses is closer to me, obviously being a prophet and the Prophet being a prophet, than he is to you. And therefore, we will also fast on this day to commemorate the emancipation of the Jewish people and of Moses. So this is really a very unique sort of fast for Muslims in a sense, because in a sense, some people accuse Muslims of being anti-Semitic. And yet, I say to these people, and I've said it on the media as well, how can we be anti-Semitic when every single year for the last 1400 years, we have been fasting on the 10th of Muharram to commemorate and celebrate the emancipation of Moses and the Jews? How can we possibly be anti-Semitic? It's impossible for us to be anti-Semitic. So that is the interesting thing about all this, that they need to understand that we Muslims, we are celebrating their emancipation. So so that's the reason that Sunnis fast, and also there are many other things which have happened in this month, which are extremely important for us to understand. Now, in terms of the Shia, our Shia brothers, they commemorate this particular day because Hussein radiallahu anh,
that's a grandson. That's a grandson of the Prophet.
Grandson of the Prophet was horrifically martyred, made shaheed on this day, and under terrible circumstances.
In Karbala,
in Karbala, in Iraq. And of course, that's a very painful thing for us, for all Muslims, not just for Shia. But it is not a sunnah. It is not a practice of the Prophet ﷺ to mourn the death of anyone beyond 3 days. And we find this in Bukhari, number 4926. And especially not to commemorate it on a yearly basis, let alone to physically harm yourself in a show of religiosity. So, and for Sunnis, this would be classified as bid'ah, and in fact even haram. Why? The Prophet ﷺ said very clearly, La darara wala dirar, do not harm yourself and do not harm others. And of course, we see not all Shia, but there are many who will beat themselves in public as a sign and an expression of mourning for the death, the very tragic death of Hussein radiallahu anh. So for Sunnis, this would be unacceptable, and therefore, we certainly wouldn't take part in anything like that. And remember, we as Muslims should be following Quran and Sunnah, what the Quran says and what the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad say. And this event happened many years after the departure of the Prophet ﷺ. So therefore, it cannot be incorporated as part of our faith.
You are saying that it should be left. I mean, this is a historical sad event which took place on 60. It was actually 61 years after the Hijrah, and of course we should not actually see it, especially in those pictures, when we see those pictures of what we call self-harm, all this kind of thing, Iraq.
Self-harm in itself is haram. And of course, you can just imagine some people who are depressed, usually depressed people self-harm, but this is obviously an expression of mourning. But you can see someone, certainly from a Shia of faith, saying, well, if my mom and dad and brothers and sisters can harm themselves in this way every year in public, and some people obviously end up even dying as a result, and they have these chains, and at the end of those chains, they've actually got knives and razors, and they're hitting themselves. So then some people, some Shia, brothers and probably sisters, but certainly brothers, they will bleed to death as a result of beating themselves. So someone who is in a depressed state could use that as a justification for self-harm, unfortunately. So for Muslims, for Sunni Muslims, this is not a sad month. It's not a month of sadness by any means. It is most certainly a month of happiness. And sadly, we have marriages that are postponed because they think that it's a bad idea to get married in Muharram, and of course it certainly isn't. And many other happy events that normally would take place, sadly, they don't take place. So yes, that's the reality.
Okay, and I think on a political level, I think we cannot see how people use it and then start amplifying that historical event, who is right to be the caliph and all these kind of things. And normally that should be left to history and it should not be actually, we shouldn't see.
But, I'll just make a quick point on this because we're running out of time and we've got one or two other issues to discuss. I've had discussions with, Shia brothers, and, obviously the main issue between Sunni and Shia is over, who should have been the first Khalifa. Should it have been Ali radiallahu anhu, who was, of course, the closest relative to the Prophet ﷺ. So on that basis, our Shia brothers say, well, because he was the closest relative, therefore he should have been the Khalifa automatically. And, they say, well, the Prophet ﷺ gave certain hints and this, that, the other, which, are debatable. Certainly we could say he gave certain bigger hints that Abu Bakr Siddiq should have been the next Khalifa. But, all of this is history. That's the reality. It's all history. Why should we allow a historical event to create a problem between us today? And for them to, or have basically a different branch of almost of faith, because many practices now, which are within the faith of many Shia, one could question whether they are really part of something that was taught by the Prophet ﷺ. And therefore, as I've said to my Shia friends and brothers, I said, look, what does it matter who was the first Khalifa? What does it matter who was the second Khalifa? If you said to me today that we have evidence that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, who was obviously very, very close friend of the Prophet ﷺ, actually was not the first Khalifa. The history books have got it wrong. Actually, it was Ali, the grandson, the cousin, and the son-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, who was in actual fact the first Khalifa. Would it make any difference to me? Would I tear my hair out, whatever I've got left, to argue with him? No. It's a historical thing. Big deal. I follow Quran and Sunnah. That's the point. I follow the Quran. So long as you don't tell me that there's a problem with the Quran, I'm going to be happy with that. So long as you don't tell me that there are issues with Sunnah, I'm going to be happy with that. The rest is history. Yes, we love Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh. We regard him as the greatest human being in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. We regard Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh as the greatest human being after all the prophets of Allah. That's the very high status that we give him. At the end of the day, he was an ordinary human being. He wasn't the prophet of Allah.
I think we have to pass because time, I think, is running.
Yes. And let's move on.
Shall we go to that you said about Inayat Khan and giving the word of the
mention of what's happening in China, and then we'll finish up with Noor Inayat Khan. What's happening in China is really quite disturbing, because what's happening is, look, we've probably mentioned this before. China, we know is rising. China is becoming a world power. There's no question about it. And America, since certainly World War II, has been the leader of the world and the policeman of the world. Its military is far, far greater, more powerful than any other military. China plus a number of other countries put together is more powerful than that, probably the next 10 countries put together. And America had two choices. Either it says to China, okay, you're becoming very powerful. I can see you're a superpower as well, just like me. So why don't we, rather than compete with each other, why don't we share the world? You have your area of concern and we have our area. And so, the South China Sea and all that southern, the eastern part of the world, that's your area. So fine, we're not going to interfere with that. And this western part of the world, that's our area. We won't interfere with it. You don't interfere in our area. And so let's share the world in this way. There would have been peace and a way forward. The problem is that America has gone for the second choice as it sees China rising. Destroy China before China becomes as powerful as the US. Now, with that mindset, we have a problem because China doesn't accept being bullied by the United States. So
yes, bullied.
Now, America has been building, and quite threateningly, it has now got 400 US air bases, which basically surround China and are, if you like, choking China, are ready for any action. If there's any war, those 400 air bases around China will obviously will be aimed at the missiles, and the planes and everything else will be aimed at China to destroy it. So that's where, and now China has just announced today that it has developed a very powerful missile, which is 10 times faster than sound, or at least can reach that sort of a level of 10 times faster than sound, and therefore can reach the US in a very short time. And they call it the carrier killer missile, and it tested it today, and it said, look, we're ready for World War III if that's what America wants. And unfortunately, we seem to be heading in that direction. So, may Allah help us all. But unfortunately, it seems that this war against China is unstoppable. And China, with its 1.4 billion population, and its increasingly more powerful military and very powerful economy, is not going to back down.
And I think this confrontation with the election in United States, if Trump will stay there, that's will be, I think, a continuous struggle and challenge between China and the United States, isn't it?
You know what, Dr. Aziz? I don't think it matters who's in charge. Who's in charge? It's the military. The military are the ones who are going to be doing the determination. They've always been very powerful, and they've made important decisions, and especially during Trump. Trump made it very clear. He doesn't know anything about military policy. He doesn't know much about politics anyway. He was never a politician. Mm-hmm. So he made it very clear, right from the start of his presidency, that he will be leaving it to the heads of the military to guide him about how best to use the American military. And that means, of course, politics as well. And, when you leave it to the military, they only know one thing: muscle. No, somebody's not listening to us, let's go and beat them up. So, when you have that, you've got problems. So it doesn't matter really who wins. The policy of the US is going to be the same. Is going to be to suppress China, and China is not going to allow itself to be suppressed.
Okay, I think we have to move to the last point, though, because the time is gone.
It'll be an accident that will result in a major war. And with
I hope,
nuclear
inshallah,
weapons on
we will
both
not
sides,
go there.
oh yes, we're heading for trouble.
Right. What did you say about this Inayat Khan honor there for a few minutes? We have.
Noor Khan was an Indian Muslim woman who's just today been honored by the English Heritage with the Blue Plaque Award. It's the first time in its 150-year history that they have given this Blue Plaque award to a foreigner. And we should also remember that she also was given the George Cross, which is, I think the highest award for bravery in 1949 after her death. So essentially, who was she? She was a British secret agent in World War II, yeah, who lived in London. I mean, there's a bit of background to her. I think her father was a Indian Muslim. Her mother was, I think, an American, if I'm right. And she lived in various parts of the world and educated in various parts of the world. And then she was living in London, and then she was picked up by the special sort of operations executive. He became a member of the operations executive, which were a secret organization whose aim was, to infiltrate Nazi Germany, Hitler. And she was posted in occupied France in 1943 as the first female radio operator. And of course, the radio operators, their job was to send information back to Britain regarding the Nazis. And the interesting thing is that the average life of any radio operator was about 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks, the Germans would find out who they were. They were sending these signals and radio messages back to Britain about Nazi movements here or there, and they'd be killed. She managed to survive 3 months, and unfortunately, some traitor sort of exposed her. She was captured by the Gestapo, and she was tortured, and all sorts of stuff was done to her. And finally, she was shot dead in Dachau concentration camp in Germany in 1944. So, very interesting sort of background to her that not many people knew. But certainly a lot of people know about now because of this award that's been given to her. And of course, those people who say, what did Muslims ever do? Well, we've done a lot. We've done a lot for this country. We didn't even know we've done so much, and therefore, it's a lot to be to shout out about. And say to those far-right fascists who hate us and who say that we are some kind of, enemy within or whatever, that we have given a huge amount for this country. The hundreds of thousands of Muslim soldiers of Indian Muslim soldiers who fought in World War II, which helped the British defeat Nazi Germany. They need to take all that into consideration. So we're not just here for nothing. A lot of our own Muslim brothers and sisters have sacrificed their lives so that Britain can remain free from the Nazi Germany.
All right. I think we have done nothing so far. Very good. Thank you very much for that. And I think we might have more, I think, next week, hopefully. And on the pandemic as well, and the return as well of the university student as well. And we'll see the feedback about what happened this weekend as well. And Jazakumullah khair, may Allah accept your fasting, your prayers, your supplication, our good deeds, Allah. And inshallah, until I will meet again. Jazakumullah khair. We say subhanakallah bihamdik, nashhadu astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.